Once again, greetings everybody. Good to see you. Let's start out like we normally do. Short period of bell meditation. Again, wherever you are behind your avatar, just get into a nice meditation posture. And as I ring the Ching bell, focus on the sound of the bell. Get that deep listening going so you can absorb some Dharma today. You're going to get distracted. It happens to all of us. When it does, just gently remind yourself and go back to focusing on the sound of the bell. Then short meditation, 3 recitations, and on with the talk for today. So I'll give you a moment, get into a nice posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dharma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. So today the subject is the 3 characteristics of existence. And these will be things you've heard of before as we've gone through stuff this year. But we're going to tie these 3 things together. In Buddhist philosophy, there are these 3 characteristics of existence that were realized by the Buddha during his awakening, and his all of his activities after that led him up to this particular talk, whenever he might have done it. These characteristics arise from the realities of causality and of causally conditioned phenomena, but they also fall away due to those same realities. So just like everything else, they arise and fall away. And they are impermanence, suffering, and the not-self. So I said these are philosophies, and they are, but we also practice them in a way. We practice impermanence whenever we intentionally make changes to how we think and act. So we're engaging impermanence, because if we didn't have impermanence, we wouldn't be able to make those changes within ourselves purposefully. You practice suffering just because you're a human being. That's a consequence of being a human being, is we get to practice suffering. And you practice the not-self by, well, we go back and see impermanence, right? We're able to be the not-self because we're either being changed by external forces in each moment, or we're being changed by internal forces in each moment. Now, there's a passage in some of the discourses, the Buddhist discourses, that read, quote, "Impermanent indeed are the compounded, the conditioned things. They are of the nature of arising and falling away. Having come into being, they cease to exist." So things are characterized as impermanent because they are subject to three stages of being: arising, or birth if you want to call it that, falling away, or death if you want to call it that, and decay and change. So, as we age, we kind of decay in a way, and we certainly go through a lot of changes in our lives. Kind of look at impermanence as a synonym for the Buddhist ideal of arising and falling away. Or you could even say it's for birth and death, because how impermanent is that? Birth in the human sense is impermanent, right? Because we all end up dying at some point. But birth also of an idea, right? Ideas come and go, right? They arise and they fall away. And also in the sense of combining of material phenomena from its constituent parts, and it comes all together into what is viewed as an object, right? That also fits into this concept, because it was all these separate parts. Now it's a car. But eventually, the car is going to break down, go to the junkyard. It's going to be broken down into some constituent parts, crushed up, and then something else done with it. It's going to become something else. But then there's death. Death as applied to living beings. We readily understand that. We know that's eventually coming for all living things. Death of inanimate phenomena, though, sometimes what we would call destruction, even though we know nothing is ever truly destroyed, inanimate death can be seen as the breaking down of the object, right, from its present form. So say a rock that gets eroded falls under that category. So impermanence affects everything. Everything. Impermanence is causality as it causally conditions all phenomena. And the same is true for suffering and for the not-self. Things are impermanent due to the causal nature of the universe, and human beings suffer and exist as not-self due to that same nature. All phenomena, from the material to the immaterial, from rocks to emotions, they can act as both cause and effect as they arise and fall away. Somebody throws a rock at you and it hits you in the head, it's going to cause pain. Right? So that's causality and causal conditioning. Causality in that somebody threw the rock, and causal conditioning in it hurt when it hit you. Pain being the condition that was caused. That emotional pain that you feel, right? Not the physical pain we're talking about here, but the emotional pain you feel from being hit by that rock can make you turn around and throw a rock back. So the pain becomes the cause for you to throw a rock. And all things like this are causally conditioned. You were not in pain until the rock hit you in the head, and then you reacted with emotion when you threw the rock back. Our experiences are causally conditioned both by internal and external factors. You're being causally conditioned here today. You causally begin that causal conditioning when you decide, I'm going to go to the session today. You had to causally condition yourself to do that. And then hopefully some of the things maybe you hear from me or maybe another Sangha member today, maybe that causes a change, right? That conditions you in a different way. Impermanence is the reality that all things are temporary. All things are transitory. And not accepting the truth of this will be a cause of suffering. Because nothing lasts forever in any specific form. Even the vast majority of our human cells, they're replaced every 7 to 10 years. Not all of them I found out today, because I wanted to verify this, because it's something I've thought for a long time. But the vast majority of the cells in our body are replaced every 7 to 10 years. And even the protons and the electrons and the neutrons that are the building blocks of all material phenomena, even they undergo constant change. Impermanence happens. And we can't stop it. We can hide it. We can delay it. We can stick it under the bed so nobody can see it. But it's always going to happen. It can happen naturally, right, as just a cause of what happens in the world around us, those external factors. Or we can make it happen. Again, like you coming here today, you're making a certain type of causal conditioning happen. Or you're giving it the opportunity to happen. So you made that choice, right? And we can slow down impermanence. As I said, people get facial reconstruction. They get all kinds of things done to their bodies so they can maybe try to stay young or maybe even look older. So we can slow down or seeming to slow down impermanence. Or we can speed it up if appropriate actions are taken. Actions taken can result in unwholesome transformation or wholesome transformation. So external factors we don't have a lot of control over. So we have to learn how to respond to those external factors because some of those external factors are going to try to condition us in particular ways. And maybe we don't want to be conditioned that way. Maybe that's unwholesome. So we want to be able to be mindful of the difference and aware of where these causal factors are coming from. Internally, we have to do the same, but we have control over it internally. We can decide to make changes. We can evoke that wholesome transformation in ourselves, even just little bits at a time. And in that way, we causally condition ourselves. So choosing to guide the causes and effects of impermanence, this is a path to the alleviation of suffering. Right? Change how you think, changes how you act. Change how you act, changes how you think. And it also be a path to the promotion of human flourishing. It can be a path to contentment or happiness, if you prefer. Because impermanence is an unavoidable reality. It's gonna happen, and you can't stop it. Now, you can practice how to use that reality, how you can respond to its cause and effect. You can accept that impermanence is a reality and then learn ways to transform that information into knowledge by making it a factor in how you deal with the suffering that impermanence can be the cause of. So it's up to you to experientially verify that impermanence is a fact and then use it to your benefit whenever you can. So you think, okay, impermanence is a reality, now what? How can I most effectively respond to impermanence? Well, actually, you're kind of already doing it. You just might not realize it. You get up in the morning and you check the weather report before going to work, and it shows that there's no chance of rain that day. But you look outside and you see gray clouds piling up. So you decide, you know what? I'm going to take an umbrella just in case. Well, this is responding appropriately to the suffering that can be caused by the external influences of impermanence. You're getting ready for it, right? You say, I don't know, the weather says this, but the clouds say that. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen, so I'm going to respond in a positive way, and I'm just going to take an umbrella. Or last year, you got an eye exam. Doctor checked your eyes, decided, you could use glasses. That'd be good. So you get some nice glasses. Off you go, but before you leave, you say, Doc, I'd like to set an appointment for around the same time next year. This is responding appropriately to the suffering that can be caused by impermanence. Your eyes might be worse by next year. You might be wondering how come you can't see as well. But you've been proactive with impermanence. You said, I'm going to get ready for it. Doc, set me up an appointment for next year. Might sound simple, but it is responding appropriately to this reality. You drop your favorite happy birthday coffee cup. It hits the tile floor in the kitchen, it shatters and just goes in all directions. And you get angry, and you slam your fist into the refrigerator. 2 of your knuckles crack, and the refrigerator stops working. This is responding inappropriately to suffering caused by impermanence. The coffee cup was impermanent. Deal with it. No need to get angry. And oh, by the way, your knuckles, you also proved they were impermanent. And oh yeah, the refrigerator, you proved it was impermanent too. So look at all those lessons right there. And also you learn the lesson that maybe you want to respond a little more appropriately the next time. And it can seem that impermanence can be a pretty negative reality. Negative experiences happen, right? The weatherman is wrong, health issues arise, relationships end, loved ones die, new cars get damaged, and you're supposed to deal with all these unwholesome events appropriately. This is not easy. And for a Buddhist, that is exactly what you're supposed to do. And you might ask then, well, if impermanence is unavoidable, then what can I do about it? Well, the interesting thing is, the very answer is found within the reality of impermanence. The reality of the not-self is causally conditioned by the effects of impermanence. Effects that you can allow to be uncontrolled, or you can choose to control them, or you can choose to control at least a lot of them. And now when I say uncontrolled and you can choose to control them, excuse me, I mentioned external factors. We don't have a lot of control over those, so we control what we can. But you can also have uncontrolled internal causal conditioning. Right? Like if you're stuck on a memory, on a bad memory that's affecting you every day, well, whatever that memory was, that thing happened a long time ago. It's gone. It was definitely impermanent. But you're holding on to it, trying to keep it permanent. Right? So that's a choice. So you're controlling that unwholesome causation. You can change it to wholesome. The Buddhist ideal of not-self owes its arising to the Buddha's realization of the reality of impermanence. He further realized that while impermanence was a factor in suffering, it could also be a factor in the alleviation of suffering. His acceptance that all phenomena are impermanent and that human beings are phenomena logically and pragmatically led to the realization that no aspect of being a human is permanent. There is a self, and I've talked about this a lot. but it always bears re-mentioning. Self is a perfectly good word. We are selves. Absolutely. You get to talking to friends and family, and you might say something with using self, and you might just go not self, and that'll just confuse them. So self is a very fine word. But as Buddhists, we know that really what we are is a not self. It's that self that changes with each moment. It is a person who is continually undergoing a process of transformation. So why not take advantage of it and channel that impermanence toward wholesome change, and then make that a factor in how you think and act? And like any Buddhist practice, the causal potential begins with you. It's your responsibility. You can realize the reality of impermanence just by looking at yourself in the mirror. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think I'm still like 35 years old, right? Until I step in front of the mirror and realize, oh, crud, I'm like 3 decades more than that. But that's how we are, right? I can look at myself in the mirror and go, okay, impermanence, I got it. Right? It's pretty freaking obvious when you look in the mirror. You can realize the reality of suffering through the lenses of your own experiences. You know, when you start out learning something, you don't know a lot about it. Impermanence is what allows you to learn more. Because if it was permanent, well, you just learn that one little thing, and that'd be the end of it. You can realize the reality of not self by taking a rigorously self-honest look at how you have changed and how you continue to change in each moment. You develop a deep understanding and acceptance of the 3 characteristics through insight gained about yourself and about your own life. You only have to view your own existence through that lens of rigorous self-honesty to fully realize that impermanence, suffering, and the not-self are truths. Realization that while this teaching has its foundation in human existence, the realities of impermanence and suffering and not-self encompass the causal universe. And you're more and more understanding of this, and more of your ability to engage it in a wholesome way, well, that will arise more and more as your Buddhist practice matures. The Dharma of impermanence, suffering, and not-selves are truths that are kind of beyond the human condition, because all phenomena are impermanent. You could say a white-tailed deer is a not-self, because each moment changes them too. Humankind are not the only beings that suffer, right? All phenomena are causally conditioned, and so have no permanent aspect, and so they are not self. In a way. The 3 characteristics of existence are realities. They are Dharma. They are realities that arise as both the cause and effect of your practice. For example, practicing generosity of spirit can alleviate suffering, making that suffering impermanent in that moment. Practicing mindfulness can bring about loving kindness where hatred once arose, and this reveals a not-self. It reveals that potential for further change. So the idea of this today is you have a lot more control over how you can become than maybe you realize. But you also need to realize that there may be some external causal factors that might be trying to influence you, and you've got to be aware of them and be mindful of how they may affect you. Because on the noble path, we want to always be looking at wholesome causation, right? We want to be enacting, engaging, making it happen. Wholesome causation. Because that leads to less suffering, which we know is a reality. And by us doing that, we begin to change ourselves, and that again is proof of the not-self. So think about three characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, and the not-self.